becomes critical to understand changing consumer demands. With 50% of respondents confirming that access to insights from consumer conversations are limited to a specific department within the organization. So there's clearly some way to go in terms of data democratization within the organization. So it's really time for organizations to break down their information silos and really to let this, if you want, this customer intelligence flow from all channels and across the organization, social media, reviews, market research, live chat transcripts also, for example, so that teams can quickly access new trends, optimize their marketing efforts, and create truly customer-centric experience. And finally, more than ever, the customer is calling the shots. We are all calling the shots, and I think we can say that we call them very loudly. And we've seen that word in absolutely all the comments collected from our expert networks when creating this report. Brands want to hear the customer voice, which explain why we've seen customer reviews and call center data most frequently cited in the top 5 conversation channels for brands. So now allow me to share some key findings, specifically catered to the India market, and we also compare them to the global findings. So in India, and as well as globally, we can see that customer feedback and support is the top reason that companies use these channels. Interestingly enough, product research and innovation ranks as the second most common reason businesses in India are using conversation channels. So in India, 24% versus 16 globally. So quite a substantial difference. So what does this suggest? Well, this suggests that brands are using conversations to find insights on what their customers might want next, as well as to promote products, but also finding insights on what their customer might want next. It's always the big question. Yet at this stage, few brands, 14%, have the capacity to leverage all these channels, something that is key to highlight and that will be aligned to the findings we see afterwards as well. So even though, sorry, missed the slide, even though it's evident that brands need to monitor social media, right? We all know this. But as I said before, it's not only about social media. And we can see here the difference between all of the channels is small enough that brands cannot afford to miss conversation that might take place on channels like blogs, review sites, and more. So the good news for all of us is that all this data is here. It's available to use. Aggregating it is the key to succeed. But we have now the possibility of doing more with what is available to us, as long as we have the right system and the right workflows in place. Over 50% of respondents in India stressed that they were not able to gather enough data about consumer conversations or to analyze them adequately. So you see here, despite having all data available, the majority still considers that they don't gather enough data. So this suggests that the right systems are probably not in place, or if they are, that those systems or applications don't talk to each other. And that is blocking the extract of these insights, but also stopping data democratization across organizations. So even though today the voice of the customer is available at each different touch point, connecting those dots is what remains the challenge. We also found out that a lot of manual work is still being done. And I think we all do some manual work. And so we would potentially have replied the same here. 18% of industry professionals globally, 20 in India, 20%, just a bit over the global average, stated that their organization monitors and analyzes conversation through a unified platform. So that's clearly a missed opportunity, because it means that 80% or 4 out of 5 are not leveraging a unified platform to do it. But why is it important? Well, having a unified view of your brand, your market, your customer is key. Leveraging not only online but offline data, putting them together is what makes you come to the voice of customer. Because you not only get a full picture, but think about the time that will be saved. But then most importantly, what you will do with that time. And by having more time, professionals can, for example, then add this human touch that is too often missed and that customers are really looking forward to. With many brands across region choosing marketing departments to be in charge of monitoring conversations, there's also a growing need for these teams to have analytics or data savvy individuals, that's for sure. And here APAC is leading the charge in data democratization with 41%, followed by EMEA, and last, the United States. It's really great here. I've been working in the region for 3.5 years. It's really great to see APAC leading here, especially considering all the different languages, cultural differences that need to be considered here. But what we are talking about, it's not even half the organizations, right? So a number that could still drastically increase with the right approach, the right mindset, the right process, and the right system. But the whole thing is, how can you actually do this, right? So it's really about brands need to shift the way in which they rely on consumer conversations. But for this to happen, there must be an evaluation process first. We have come up, for example, with a set of questions that you can see here that every CMO or marketing director should review after reading the report to take the correct measures to prepare their own team to make every decision consumer-driven. Social listening is only the beginning of the equation here. If you're looking to predict consumer trends and create innovative experiences for your customers. Data-driven brands are now looking at much more than just social media trends. And so you need to collect all your data in a unified platform. Product reviews, forums, call center, traditional market research, and eliminate silos. You should then analyze those conversations at scale and try to extract what we call conversational intelligence. And finally, adapt your decision-making process so that it relies on insights from conversations, our conversations, what your customers are saying. This approach will give a solid backing to all your business decisions moving forward. And so based on our findings, and as I just mentioned, the time of social listening is behind us. We can now advance to the last and final takeaway of our report that we will be sharing today. It is time to look for something more comprehensive, which we call conversational intelligence. From social media platform to product reviews and call center transcripts, customer conversations are happening everywhere. As shown in our survey statistics and verbatims, the COVID-19 pandemic made global brands more aware of the importance of consumer, market, and brand intelligence for the survival of their business. So in 2021, it's time for innovative businesses to quickly analyze consumer and customer conversations at scale, and then turn them into opportunities. And so in order to adapt to the new normal brought forth by the pandemic, this is what you should be doing. And then democratize data access within the organization for faster reaction, to create more customer-centric experiences and more innovative products. And so lastly, allow me to end with a quote from our founder at Talkwalker, Christophe Folchet. It's no longer enough for companies to independently practice social listening, on one side, market research, or customer experience. Brands need to break down the internal data silos and activate the voice of the customer in real time by combining all three in one unified platform. And the business impact afterwards is this. This will allow you to have more targeted marketing, enhance your customer loyalty, and create better products. All this while communicating in the right way. Thank you very much for your time today. I'm of course happy now, to pass the mic in a way, to Karthik, and then carry on this conversation with you all later today. Thanks again.
Well, there was indeed some interesting takeaways shared by Ben. Now, to take this forward and make it more interesting, I would like to invite Karthik to pick up where Ben left and share his expert opinion. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you so much, Besaki, and thank you so much, Benjamin, for the context setting in terms of conversational intelligence. The phrase conversational intelligence reminded me of something that I've noticed personally in my career at least a decade ago. Um, this was from a startup founder, and it was a B2C startup. It was an extremely popular startup, and the founder usually had this unusual quirk or habit of just before lunch, he used to check Twitter for feedback on what people are saying about the brand. I mean, it's actually a very popular startup, and what are people talking about the brand? So he used to just go to Twitter and enter the brand name on the Twitter search and used to search. And this is just before lunch, about 12:55 to 1 p.m. in the afternoon, just before lunch. Just he's just going out for lunch. Just before that, he'll quick casually check that. And if he notices a predominance of bad ratings and bad reviews, and people are not saying good things about the startup, he used to haul the guy who used to do data monitoring, saying, "What the hell is happening? What are you not doing right? This is not right at all." And the guy used to say that, "But this is just a snapshot. This is just 5 minutes worth of Twitter search alone. There is so much left to look at, and you're not looking at that." So, no, no, no. I am the CEO. I did the check, and this is not right, and you need to do something about it. He can show all the graphs in the world saying our overall feedback has improved, our scores in terms of NPS has improved, everything is done. But what matters there is that the boss, 5 minutes just before lunch, if he sees something bad, that's the kind of sentiment that plays on the boss's mind, which actually trickles down to the organization saying something is wrong, something is that kind of stuff. So I was just reminded of that when I remembered, when I heard you say conversational intelligence, which is at least several layers above an impulsive, impromptu check online on just one platform to check the kind of sentiment. I'm not saying the boss was wrong, but he probably put so much effort on one impulsive, impromptu check that he actually missed the 95% of what's happening outside the world kind of stuff. With that, let me give you a context of how I have actually seen this moving on and how I used to explain it to clients just to be able to tell them saying that you need to put together a practice to listen to what people are talking about you. It's like this. So it's very simple. Just imagine you are in a busy mall. There are many brand showrooms in the mall. And then you are in one of the showrooms and you actually own a very popular brand. And there are many people walking here and there, and there are many people standing there and talking. You as a brand cannot listen to what those two people are actually saying about your brand. They could actually be talking about your brand because they're talking to each other in the real world. You cannot hear them at all. You cannot even go close to them and then tap their shoulders and saying, I noticed you pointing the finger at our shop. Are you saying something about it? You can't do that because it sounds utterly creepy. You can't do that. But online, they could be doing exactly the same thing. They would actually be chatting about your brand on Instagram via a post and a comment, and you can actually listen to it because they have tagged you, they have actually mentioned your brand name. It's not creepy at all because in the offline it sounds stalkerish, but online it is completely normal behavior because they have mentioned your brand name, they have probably tagged you also. You can instantly listen to it. The kind of opportunity cost comes in when there are two people sitting in your restaurant. Suppose you are a very popular restaurant and there are two people sitting. The first thing that people do these days when they are in a restaurant is not eat. They actually order and take a photo of what's come onto their table. That's what everybody does. And they have to compulsively share it on Facebook and Instagram. That's the first behavior everybody. And when that photo is shared, because it's presented with so much beauty and kind of care that has gone into presentation, when they share it, imagine within the next 2 or 3 minutes, they get a response from the brand saying, "Thank you for sharing this photograph. You are in a restaurant, blah, blah, etc." And then a conversation starts. That conversation could start in the first 5 minutes of the customer being in the restaurant, or it could start 2 months after the customer has gone, long gone completely. And even the customer has probably forgotten that he even gone to the restaurant. But if it happens within the 5 minutes or the next 1 hour, you have a conversation loop being closed. They say something to their friends. The brand is also part of that world ecosystem, and the brand responds in real time. The loop is closed, and the person is more likely to remember the brand saying, "This was a brand that listened to me." That makes a very big difference, because it's a conversation. It's not just a one-way broadcast. It's a conversation that's happening, and the brand acknowledges it's a conversation. Now, just think of what kind of triggers have actually started to incentivize how we talk online. Usually, we don't talk about a product or a service if it is just satisfactory or competent, because there is no incentive to talk about it at all. We generally have become the kind of people who talk about two kinds of extremes. One, a product or service is extremely good and really good, and we are blown out of our minds saying, wow. Or if it is terrible, the service is terrible or the product was completely bad, and you talk about them. It's just, I mean, it's just normal human nature to not talk about satisfactory experiences anymore or competent experiences. I mean, you don't say that I went to the restaurant and the food was nice. You don't say that at all. If the food was extraordinarily good, you put a photo and say, wonderful food, man, it was wonderful, please go there. Or it was terrible, service was extraordinarily bad, I would never go there. Those are the kind of reactions that are extreme that are there. All the more reason you need to gauge both, whether it's positive extreme or a negative extreme. All the more reason you need to keep a track and then close the conversation loop equally importantly. That's important. In the same context, I came across a friend who had actually shared on LinkedIn that her company, I'll tell you which, I mean, like which industry it is in after some time. So her company had actually created a social media command center, which is a big shebang basically. It's got large screens and a room, a couple of people sitting and tracking the numbers and various data points and charts and etc. And then I realized that the company is actually into bathroom fittings. And I was just amazed, saying, why does a bathroom fitting company need to set up a social media command center to listen to consumers? Are there many people out there saying, I mean, I'm so happy with my bathroom fitting in my loo. I'm so happy to be with this brand. We don't do that actually. I mean, we don't talk about bathroom fitting on social media. We actually tell our friends or people that we know personally in the offline world, not in the online world. And then she actually explained to me the context, saying it's not just our brand mentions we are listening. We are listening to what people are going through in and out and much above the decision being taken for bathroom fitting. For instance, if people are talking about moving to a new place, buying a new place, or trying to invest in a new place, or taking a loan for a new place, all these are cues that will eventually end up as one of the decisions need to be made around bathroom fittings, among so many others. It could also be interiors, it could be tiling, it could be roofing, and bathroom fittings could be all of it. And she said that there are so many touch points that we can have if we just remove the fact that, I mean, or the idea that people need to talk only about our brand. They could actually be talking about the category. They could be talking about related categories. Everything is intelligence that is being gathered, which can actually get back to the product team or the service team to actually make it more interesting for them to actually create new services and points basically. And she also mentioned that she actually used those intelligence for their marketing campaigns, how to actually set the tone for marketing campaigns based on what people are talking and then trying to connect. It's almost like saying, if you're thinking of home loan, to start a home loan, you need to think of the many things that will happen once you move into the home. And one of them could be bathroom fittings, and you need to put it in your mind saying you need to be in the market to look at what kind of bathroom fittings they should use. And that was very, very interesting from a point of view also. The third point I wanted to address is the speed of response when it comes to customer conversations online. Before social media, this say about in the period of say 2005, 2006, when social media was fairly new in the world and even in India. If I want to reach out to a customer care center, it is usually the phone basically. I mean, I need to pick up the phone, I need to talk to them, and the ongoing joke that is most common across the world, not just in India, is that when you pick up a phone, you will be asked to wait, you will be put on hold, there is a hold music going on, and you will be bored out of your wits. You'll be just holding the phone and sitting like this, and there'll be music, they will go to the manager and somebody will come to you. The basic understanding is they will waste your time. So generally people are very wary of picking up the phone and talking to somebody because it goes into a loop and you have no idea when you will get some kind of resolution. But social media has changed that completely. You can literally say something in terms of your customer complaint on Twitter or on Facebook or through an email, or like even email is probably one of the tools that we do that. But in all these cases, it's not real time like a phone call, right? You don't say something and then hold on with your life and your work, everything stops and you just wait saying, I'm waiting for resolution. You don't do that. You say something on Twitter and you close Twitter and you move on actually. When you need a response, it will automatically come to you because the brand would take notice of it after say 30 minutes or 1 hour, and then you will see that you have been tagged and saying, hey, Mr. Karthik, we have actually read your complaint. We will come back to you in 24 hours, or here is a solution. Could you please go to this direct message and share more details with us? All those things happen. So that actually changes the equation considerably. Your real time is not wasted. You just say something and move on. Now, here is where the change in attitude has happened. If in a real-time conversation you wanted real answers in real time, saying I'm saying something, you need to respond something, I need to close the resolution. If you do that, people actually started assuming, saying on Twitter I can say something and move on. I will get a tagged message later and I'll probably see. Same thing with email. I will email and after 24 hours I'll get a response back. But these days it doesn't happen like that at all. Somebody complains on Twitter to a telecom provider, and then if they don't get a response within 2 to 3 minutes, because that has become the benchmark in the industry, in the telecom area at least, industry at least, if you don't get a response back in Twitter, at least a placeholder response saying, yes, we have noticed your complaint, we will come back to you in X hours. If you don't get that, people will start raging online saying, I had a problem with my phone and I had actually tweeted to them, and imagine their guts, they have not responded to me even now. I'm going to show them who I am. I mean, that's the attitude in India usually. I'm going to show them who I am, and then you tag half a dozen people. You tag Economic Times, you tag the Times of India, as if the whole world is coming down on your problem, and then the brand is forced to respond immediately in real time. Oh my God, who is this guy? He has said something, and our brand perception is going for a toss, and things go completely haywire. That's the perception, because the industry benchmark actually sets our own expectations as to how soon should somebody get a response based on their complaint on social media. And the most important factor here is, when you complain on social media, it is public. Unlike a phone call or an email, which is a private channel where nobody else knows you have a problem and nobody else knows the brand goofed up. When you complain on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, the entire world potentially could know that this is happening. And if somebody else is considering that product at the time, they would think twice, saying, oh, my friend has complained and there's no response at all. Let me just put this product back in the list. Let me look at some other competing products which seems to be more responsive to this thing. That's literally how usually it happens. The fourth thing that I wanted to mention is how we make decisions to make a purchase, or of a product or a service these days. For instance, if I'm looking for a phone, I'm, for instance, looking for a new smartphone, and I'm actually just searching a couple of phone reviews based on what I shortlisted. I go to Google and search for product reviews. I look at Amazon or Flipkart and look for product reviews. If I see 3 reviews back to back from uh, customers or people who have already used the product, and if I see 3 bad reviews, I literally take the product and put it down my shortlist and take some other product. But if I see 3 good reviews on top of it, this is exactly like the behavior of a startup founder I told you. I look at something impulsively, I look at 3 things and yeah, looks good, looks good, looks good. Okay, let me retain this product. Bad, bad, oh my God, this sounds very bad. It may not actually be bad. It's just that the algorithm in Google and Twitter and Instagram showed me 3 bad things back to back, next to next. But that actually changes my mind perception, saying something seems to be bad, I should not be doing this at all. I just take the product and keep it out of. It's unfair, I know, on the product, because the whole world is out there of very good positive reviews of the brand. But I just happen to notice 3 quickly because that's my time at stake, and I just put it down this complete list. So all the more reason why brands need to be on top of their bad reviews. You can't wish them away because it is actually a function of your product and your own service, but be on top of it, saying this can have a real impact on how people decide a purchase, basically, whether it's a purchase of a product or a purchase of a service. Both really matter extremely well. The last point that I wanted to focus on is, you are actually mentioned customer conversations and the kind of data that it leads to. But one of the most important factors in India, more so from a B2B organization point of view, because in B2C, customer reviews matter a lot, customer conversations matter a lot. But from a B2B, because India is is full of tech companies, very large tech companies, which employ a hell of a lot of people of our population. There, employee feedback matters a lot. I mean, for instance, if somebody is being given an offer letter or going for an interview to a large company, which is a tech company, a B2B company, employee feedback matters a lot. And the first place they all go to check out the company, Glassdoor. They go to Glassdoor and look at employer brand review. So the kind of feedback that you get from potential employees, ex-employees, future employees, those really, really matter from a B2B organization point of view, particularly in India, the tech company side, because it will make or break a decision to join a company or go for an interview. Those things matter a lot, actually. And this is also happening on LinkedIn, because people search the company on LinkedIn and look at the kind of comments that are there in the career section, or just for the posts of various companies kind of stuff. So people can actually do the same thing that I just mentioned in terms of looking at 3 bad reviews. They actually look at 3 bad conversations on how people are not happy with the company, or people who have been in the company are not happy with the company, either on Glassdoor or on LinkedIn, and they actually change their mind. It's not fair to the company, because the company can present its side, but that's just human nature, because you quickly check something and then you check up and that's 3 bad reviews and 3 bad comments, and then you just make up your mind consisting this seems to be not a very good company and I need to be cautious about this company. So feedback from an employee point of view to build employer brand is a very significant use case for customer intelligence and also conversational intelligence. That's largely what I had in terms of the context setting. We could probably chat more in the Q&A that we're going to have with each other now shortly. Over to you, Benjamin and Daisaki.
Thanks a lot, Karthik, for sharing these insights. And this conversation is already sounding very interesting. And I'm sure our audiences would also agree to that. So to make it more power-packed, I would now love to invite both of our speakers to come together over a fireside chat and engage in a candid conversation with each other, where you can further pick up more pertinent questions for each other from the research paper and also from the conversation that we had so far. So we really can't wait to have both the gentlemen together. So without further delay, let's get this started. Over to you, Ben and Karthik.
Absolutely.
Sure thing.
Can I pose a couple of questions that were on the top of my mind based on
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Perfect. The thing is that I've actually gone through the report and I had a few questions based on how I was trying to sell social media listening or command centers to clients. The first thing I wanted to understand is who do you ideally want to sell within an organization? Because I noticed one particular point saying it is usually the marketing teams that own customer conversations, understandably. But if you look at breaking the silos, that it's not just customers who may be talking, it could be employees talking, it could be general people talking, all kinds of people could be talking about brands and companies. Who should actually own customer conversations or just conversations about the brand? There is brand conversation. Who in the company should, which department should ideally own? Based on that, you could actually sell it more appropriately within the organization, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Karthik. And of course, that, also based on your experience historically, media monitoring, social listening was more in the PR, marcoms, type of departments, right? They were owning that part. And then we saw a shift, going towards marketing. Yes, clearly. But exactly, we feel that, different departments should be involved in this. You should be talking, and we see this more and more. For example, the product innovation team, the consumer insights department, people that are actually working on what next product to develop, on how, create something that would be more relevant to their audience. And we see that more often. And that's also based on the multiplicity of channels where people can discuss now. And you've mentioned that. But ideally, we should be talking across the organization, right? Because the organization itself should be talking to each other. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to achieve. And this is the trends that we see clearly happening. We've seen, more departments getting involved, more departments getting interest also into what are people saying about us, Yeah. You have VPHRs now, asking, okay, but actually what's our reputation, And that's exactly a very good point that you made. And so that's why I see it. We see more and more departments being involved into those decisions.
Excellent. The other thing that I want to check with you is one of the point of information that you're gathering, or one of the data sources that you mentioned in one of the earlier slides, was call center transcripts. That was extremely interesting because we all have experience of talking to a call center, and just before we start talking, it actually announces. I mean, the call center is saying this call will be recorded for data monitoring purposes, and that's an automated message that comes in during the call center. And I mean, we always used to wonder, saying, who's really monitoring our conversation? Is it really happening or not? Or who's doing what about it? But that's interesting. So this means that you're actually picking up a non-public channel and putting it into the overall uh, source of data that you're trying to gather, and that's one of the content pipes that is coming in. So which makes the data a lot more richer, because this is actually a very focused conversation that's happening, and it's more likely by an actual consumer, not just a person with an interest in the product online elsewhere on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, but an actual customer who has a problem or a point to make, which could be a very rich data set when added to the overall pool of the conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point and a good example. So first of all, to explain a bit how this can work is that, the machine learning, the algorithm, that you were applying before on social, can be applied on anything that is text also based, for example, right? And extracting the data in the same way. What matters is that what data sets are you actually analyzing? And I think you made a good point. And we've seen it in the report, and everybody out of the more than 1,000 respondents that we had, it's not only about social media, there's much more. And so here what matters is the capacity or the ability, if you want, to take online data, right, that we're all quite aware about, but that we call offline, either first or third party data, the company's data, whatever you want to call it, and you put it together. And this is really to come to what we call the voice of the customer, right? And by doing this, you can get to the point of getting a unified view of your brand, your market, and your consumer, right? Because you're connecting the different touch points that are available. The data is, and what is great is that the data is available to us. It's either online or we have it in our companies. But what matters is that, do we have the right connectors? Are our system and applications talking to each other? But if you have the right technology, you can see it, and we've seen it with great success with some leading brands that we work with. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. The third thing that I wanted to ask you is about what next of the data. Just assume that the data is, I mean, the whole system is put in place, and an organization has started gathering data from various sources, including call center transcripts about their products, about their company, about people, and extra. It's been done. Now, next is what to do of this data, because that's when you actually truly make use of something that you have put together as a process. You need to do something about it. And from my own experience, from a PR and comms point of view, I know how valuable the data is. For instance, most of the crises that brands face, you could actually say, I mean, you could actually figure out that there is going to be a crisis or there is something brewing quite a few hours before the crisis or quite a few days before the crisis. Because if you keep track on who's talking what about the company, you can make a plot saying this could brew into a larger crisis eventually. So we need to create a crisis monitoring plan and a crisis response plan. We do that very, very consciously in PR. But not many customer care related crises are actually seen in advance, because people don't have a view of what's brewing. Is there something going on? For instance, I can give you one example of a famous telecom provider. There was a person in a news organization who had a major problem with his telecom provider, like most people. And then he actually tried to email them. They didn't respond at all. And he called them. They put on hold and everything. And finally, he got really bored and very tired of all the things. And he went on Twitter. He had about 10 followers on Twitter. And then he wrote on Twitter saying, hey, whatever, I'm having a big problem. Could you please help solve this? It's been 3 months. You're not doing anything at all. And I know for a fact that the telecom provider company didn't really care for it, because I spoke to them much later, didn't really care for it because they had a graded response system saying if a person has got a lot of followers, we need to address that on priority, because that can blow up in our face in a brand perception problem or a PR problem, and it will become a major media crisis or whatever. So we need to respond to them. But if they have lesser number of followers, we will respond to them, but we will give it second or third priority, because it can come later. I mean, it's unfair. I understand the graded, but it's also a workflow related problem. They need to do something about it based on priority, not priority, etc. So they will come to it, but late. It so happened for the misfortune of the telecom company that one of the 10 followers was a colleague in the news organization who had about 3 million followers. And she actually figured out saying, oh my God, this is the guy who actually set up all my equipment and he seems to be having a problem with the telecom company. Let me help him by retweeting his tweet. And then from 10 followers, in which it was just languishing and nobody was watching it, it went to 3 million plus 10 followers overnight. Literally, I mean, within a few minutes, it went to 3 million people immediately. And then the telecom organization went completely ballistic, saying, my God, we need to do something about this. We ignored this guy for 10 and it became 3 million now. Now, they could have actually seen the trend as to it's not just the 10 that matters. Who among the 10 could potentially blow this into the face and make it to the world? It was actually right in front of them. They could have noticed it if they had set up things right appropriately. Even the grading should be done properly. So they actually missed it and it became a problem and then they solved it. I mean, if it's a problem, it's not a major problem that will last for decades. It's just a problem for that day. But still, it was avoidable as a problem. So the question is, how should organizations plan for the next step after they come to you? Because you set up the pipelines to get the data and make sense out of the data, but they need to act on it. If they don't act on it, they are still sitting on a mine and it will just blow up in their faces from time to time. So how would you guide them to actually set up the next of the process to make truly use of the data that you create them for?
That's a very good point, and also a very relevant example, right? That shows that sometimes, you should take care of any customer complaint potentially, regardless of who that person can be, right? But that's more who you are as a brand, right? So I think you're right, and I think it comes always to the point that a lot of data is available, right? But how can you make it actionable? And how can you make sure that people are actually communicating, sharing the right data? So it's all about workflows that you organize internally, but it's also about the mindset. Are we really willing to work together for the benefit of the brand? We know that our customer expectations, all of ours, I've become extremely fussy sometimes now, in the last year, much more than I was before. And so, but I also, work for a brand, right? And so knowing myself as a customer, I can adapt, for what I can expect my customer to then expect. And I think that's this mindset change that is extremely important. Are you willing to work with marketing, with product innovation, with customer support, with HR, with the business, with everyone? And are we willing really to take an approach where there's no fingers to be pointed at no one, but are we really trying to do the best? And then once you put your system in place, you have automated alerts, you have different ways for you to get notified, regardless of the person having 1 or 1,000 followers, right? And then creating automation for the right people to react at the right time, right? But what matters now is how can you really do it is the mindset. And the technology part helps you because all this conversation and analyzing conversation at scale now is done in real time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big difference as to before.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. One last just comment. It's not a question. It's more of a comment because it makes sense because I used to use this comment to convince clients to go for social monitoring. It's just the fact that social monitoring or gathering customer data intelligence or those kind of intelligence may not offer instant gratification for companies because it's not like you are actually putting up an advertisement and people start buying your product in hordes. It's not instant gratification. It needs to be done in the background. It's almost like insurance. You have to do it. It's important because it will pay one day finally, and you need to do it. You won't be able to see the results of, okay, I put X dollars in this whole listening exercise, and what am I going to get Y in terms of ROI in the next 1 year? You may not get anything at all, but it's an ongoing process. It needs to be done. That day a crisis hits, or that day you get a great idea for a new product extension, that's when it pays back in droves actually. With interest, it pays back. That's an investment that's there. And it's completely up to companies to make use of it on an ongoing basis. Keep looking at the data. Share the data with all the organizations and all the silos inside so that everybody can make their own sense of the data. What do I do? For instance, HR will look at from an employer branding point of view. Marketing will look at from a customer feedback point of view. The CEO's office could actually look at it from the CEO's perception point of view because what the CEO says in media makes a very big difference. And if people are talking about the CEO in some context, that's actually the perception of the brand itself. That also matters. So it matters across the various silos in the organization. So it is up to the organizations to actually let go of this fact that this is an investment that won't pay us immediately and we won't see any results at all, and to look at on a monthly basis or probably a fortnightly basis, saying what is the kind of insight have we gathered this week or this fortnight? Is there something actionable from this or not? For instance, the most simple one, if people are actually seeing a lot of chats, I mean, the company is looking at a lot of chat around what the CEO said in an interview in Economic Times. That is cue for the CEO to write more or share more details on his own LinkedIn profile as a connection, saying, I actually spoke this in an interview in Economic Times. I actually saw a lot of chatter on LinkedIn on this topic, blah, blah. Here is a rejoinder to it. Here is my point of view on this topic. That makes a lot of sense for the perception building of the CEO himself. So that I mean, or herself, it actually works quite well. So it is an investment. It is an insurance. It will pay with interest if you make use of the data on an ongoing basis. If you just put it in one corner of the organization, yes, we have done this job, that's not the end of this at all. It needs to be looked at on a frequent basis so that we can make use of the data and make it work for your organization.
No, absolutely, and yeah, again, you're absolutely right. And what is good is that you've seen it from the very start, also of that possibilities that were offered by listening or by other different type of system. You've done it at the agency level, on the brand side, and now advising different people. So that's why also I have a question. I have a question for you. And we talked about customer expectations, right? Being proactive, into planning or response, or being fully aware of what could come in terms of crisis when you're a brand, right? But according to you, what should brands be careful about, or where, if you want, should brands draw the line between proactive listening to understand their customer, but at the same time respecting the customer privacy?
Yeah, quite simple actually, because proactive listening should be done. But unless you let the customers know that you are listening, they have no clue at all. The point is you are listening to publicly available sources. You are not listening to private sources at all because you don't have the thing is that you don't have the rights to listen to private sources, which makes perfect sense. You're listening to publicly available sources mostly, this blogs, channels, customer care conversations, those stuff. But the thing is that you can't just identify individuals out of the conversation. You need to aggregate the data and look at a larger set in terms of intelligence. That's how you need to do that. That's one. Second one, never be impulsive to respond to somebody. Never be impulsive because you're a brand, you're not an individual. Never be impulsive and just, okay, somebody saying something bad about my product, let me respond to that person. Don't do that at all because it's not about that one person. It's about a larger sentiment that a large number of people could be holding about your brand. So never be impulsive at all because that's the human nature usually because somebody's saying something about my brand, I'm working in this brand, I need to defend my brand right now. That usually happens. So never be impulsive at all. I've seen more PR crisis out of one person in the customer care division or the CEO's office being impulsive, and that actually blows up into the face of organization or companies than any other kind of problem because we're all humans. We all see something and we react instinctively, but it will never go away. The screenshots will remain and it will just keep on haunting the brand and the person for the rest of their life actually.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. Thank you for that, Karthik. And well, you've been again, advising now brands, for quite a while, and we've seen that there's been an acceleration, right, in this digital transformation for sure. Brands that were not really engaged into this path, had to do it, since the events of last year. But there's still quite a lot of businesses that are just getting started, right, really on this path, on this journey to digital transformation. And to try to gain intelligence from those consumer conversations taking place, all around us and all around them, right? So, according to you, what could they do, really to start with the first step that they should try to undertake into this transformation?
The first step would probably be from an organizational point of view, in terms of the hierarchy point of view. I would probably assume that they need to put one department as being fully responsible for gathering this data, and this is regardless of whether it's customer data, employee data, what kind of data, but one department needs to put. Usually, marketing takes the lead in a very selfish way because They want to know what our people are talking about our product, and it's a good feedback loop for marketing to act upon. That works perfectly well. But I would think more than marketing, it would be the CEO's office or the HR are probably more appropriate to own the data at least, because marketing has a very selfish reason from a customer view point of view alone. But HR or the CEO of office could probably look at it at a 360 level and not just product level and customer level. They could look at it at a much larger level. So I think the most important sign off as to who buys the product and sets things as in motion is actually quite important from that perspective. It need not be marketing alone, because they have one important task cut out of this data use. But there is so much more that you can do from that, particularly in the Indian context, the B2B context, it matters a lot. So I think that could be a good conversation for you to have even with clients, to not look at it from a marketing only point of view, but look at it from an organization point of view, and which department would be better off owning this piece, and then all other departments come together to form their own workflows around, this is the data, we gather this data, we need to do something actionable out of this data on a frequent basis, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure you know that. I hope that people are taking notes, right? And so when people come to you and you advise them, okay, this is what we recommend. This is what I've seen being successful. Let's say so they start on this journey. Everybody is excited, but they're maybe not getting, to the level that they expected at the beginning, right? We know it is with expectation sets at the beginning, and everything. So first, how do you react to this, and how do you still, stay with them? In trying to overcome those main obstacles when extracting those insights and intelligence from conversations?
Yeah, I've actually faced this with a couple of clients, because they seem very disillusioned in the first 1 or 2 months of setting up a command center. They're not getting anything meaningful. And what do I do with this? I put up screens and I have a room. I have 2 people employed for this, not getting anything at all. So as an agency, we used to work towards small wins. What can we make them gain tangibly? There is something that you can gain. Here is the data, you need to do something about it in month 1, month 2, so that they see value instantly. If they don't see it in the first 2 months, they lose interest, saying this is not working. Do I need to continue doing it for 1 full year? So we create small wins on a week-on-week basis or a fortnight or a monthly basis, saying here is a very important piece of data that you need to action, you need to do something about it. When they see the loop being closed, we got the data, we did something about it, and it went to the customer is happy, which could be just one customer, but it could be a very influential customer, so that the NPS scores go up. Something happens in the business as a result, and that's when the business gains trust in the whole processing. Yeah, there is something here. But they also understand that the agency can't be prodding me with small wins every time. I need to set up an internal process to get my own small wins and big wins on an ongoing basis. That's when it truly works completely together. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot for this, Karthik. So do we have time? Maybe it would be good to open this to the floor and to the attendees, right? Maybe it's the right time to take some questions. Yes.
Well, that was without a doubt quite a power-packed and energetic session. We have gained some really good insights on how brands can improve their services, adopt strategic thinking, and leverage the right technical tools along with a customer-first approach. And now we move on to our Q&A session. So the first question that we have from our attendees today is, so this question goes out for both Ben and Karthik. So the question is, what should be the most important performance metrics to ensure customer conversations are being effectively used for insights?
Metrics. I would let Benjamin respond to that, because he would be more hands-on with this, I guess.
Well, it's a good question, but I think that, again, we looking just at the metrics and what they think might be missing the whole picture. What matters first is to gather as much information as possible, right? That is the most important, right? Then you're trying to see what you already have in your own systems and try to see if there's common sense, if there's things that are actually replicated from what people say online and what you knew about yourself. And this is where you can potentially define your own KPIs and the right metrics for you, for your business. Because what is right, for example, for Karthik or for myself is not the same, right? Especially in the context of ever-changing digital landscape and enhanced customer expectations. So I would recommend, look at what is said, look at what you have, look at what you're good at, because there's reasons you're good at, right? And then put your own metrics, your own KPIs, and try to make sure that you match them in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Ben. So we move on to our next question, that is, what is a typical learning curve of the tools and techs that can be used for gaining conversational insights, and any precautions to be put in place?
Let me take a stab at it based on my experience of how I dealt with this. Um, Much of the work that you do with a partner like a Talkwalker or any other tool that you actually bring in for social insights gathering, it actually depends on the kind of keywords that you feed into it, because keywords are the way that you are able to attract the right kind of conversations, which is talking about your company, you're talking about product like the brand. This is where the most of the homework that needs to be done. Many, I mean, for instance, if it is the marketing team that is actually bringing in this thing, they wouldn't consider adding the names of key personnel in the company, that is the CXO or the CEO, CTO, CMO, their names in the keywords at all. They would rather look at it from a product point of view. Here are our products, here are our services, here are the industry areas that we are looking at, and that's what they would do it. But when you also include the PR person in the mix along with the marketing, the PR person would say, yes, absolutely, here are the 20 top people in the organization. Their name should also be in the keywords. If there is some chatter about them, I need to know about it, because from his perspective or from her perspective is equally important from a PR perspective. So the keyword part is extremely important. And I've also noticed that most of the tools, and it's not just the problem of the tools, it's the way that it's the way the platforms operate, at least from a social media point of view. At least about 90% of the results come from Twitter, because it's an open platform. It's a 100% open platform. Unlike, say, Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, where most of the posts are done between people or to groups or organizations or to friends kind of circles. So they are actually partially public posts. They are not fully public posts, partially public. So most of the results may come from Twitter, which could be a bit disillusioning for many large organizations. I actually set up this entire process, but 90% coming only from Twitter, and Twitter is not even the #1 platform in the world. Why is this working? Is this working kind of question? So that's something that even Ben can probably adjust that part.
Thank you, Karthik. So the next question is a common question that came from a few of our audiences. So I'll merge the questions. So it goes out, data and privacy concerns are causing customers to either avoid social media platforms or to move to newer ones, which brands have never targeted before. So how do you think, what kind of effect will this have on brands in gaining customer insights?
Yeah, it's a very good, again, it's a very good question, and we've seen it, with the rise, for example, of TikTok, in the last 18 months, right? That has been quite spectacular. But that's a good point, so people are maybe feeling a bit more concerned, right, by sharing on social media, but what they do is that you still want to communicate, right? It's just you're doing it somewhere else. And Karthik said it, we have the review channel, as employees, you have the Glassdoor, you have the Indeed, and we're seeing, every day now, with the brands we work with, more and more requests, from those type of platforms, and what is the data that we can get, right, from there. And so it's not less data, it's just where are people saying it, and how can you capture that to then define the insights, find the trends or the potential issues, so then that you have to tackle afterwards, right?
Right. Okay. So moving on to our fourth question. So once again, this goes out to for Ben as well as Karthik. So the question is, can you share some insights as to how brands can capture emotions and consumer behavior over time through social media listening?
Good question. Most of the tools are evolved enough to understand the larger sentiment arc in terms of what people seem to be thinking. It's not just people are saying you are wonderful, you suck. It's not just that. People are saying a lot of cues. I mean, people are using a lot of words to explain their experience with a brand or a product or a service. And most of these tools are extremely adept at trying to look at the larger sentiment. Is it largely positive? It's largely negative. That works quite well. Which is why I gave that example of the founder who actually makes the same thing from a pure human intuition point of view, saying, I am checking Twitter for 5 minutes and the large sentiment seems to be negative. But that's very impulsive because he's not looking at the larger picture. The tool would be able to look at more sources, more data, and make a much more clearer understanding, saying the larger sentiment seems to be, 80% seems to be positive, only 20% seems to be negative. It doesn't mean that there is no negative. There is something, so you need to drill deeper into what are causing the negativity factors. Can we address them and do something about them? It could be just distribution. So you need to work on distribution to make that go up.
Great. So we have time to take 2 more questions. So moving on to the second last question, it goes out. How can we integrate and analyze unstructured social data in an efficient manner?
All yours, Ben.
Yeah. So here again, so it's about the technology that you had working on for example the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, let's say, or even offline data, for example printed press, radio, TV broadcast. What was available to do then, and that technology that is working, extracting those insights from that, finding the right trends, potential issues, it's working on other sets of data, first or third party data. Right. What matters is to connect it, to your system, and then let the AI, let the machine learning algorithms do their job. If we were trusting them on, let's say, online or offline data, we should be trusting them on this data as well, because it will work the same way and you will get similar type of insights. But looking at a lot of data that is, I think it's at ABM, they were saying that more or less, according to them, companies have 80% of the whole data that they're not looking at and that they're not using. Imagine the insights that we all have into this data, right? That is not yet put together.
Thanks, Ben. So with that, we move on to the final question for the day, which is, can there be a deviation between evaluating customer preferences through digital conversations and through face-to-face physical interactions? And also how to balance the two effectively in this digital world?
I didn't get the question. What was the first part of the question?
The first question is, can there be a deviation between evaluating customer preferences through digital conversation and through physical interactions, and how to balance the two effectively in this digital world?
All yours, then. I'm not sure what to say in that context.
Yeah, same. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the question is how to, can there be a deviation between evaluating the customer preferences that comes through digital conversation as well as through physical interactions, and how a brand can manage these two effectively in a digital friendly world?
Okay. So maybe with what I understand, the question is, so apologies to the person if I'm not going on the right track. Is that indeed, it has completely changed. We were used, to going to shops, to do everything was physical interactions, right, mainly. Of course, e-commerce had been developed, particularly in India, for quite a while with great success stories there. But now even the physical interactions, have changed, and they're more digitalized, right? There's seen some great example in Korea and Japan, for example, for some beauty or makeup companies, that are basically giving a full digitalized experience, but on site, right? Making sure that you absolutely connect the two. And for you, the customer, it means that there's no difference into the experience. It's still the same feeling that you have towards the brand, which should, in theory, enhance your loyalty towards that brand, because they're talking to you the same way, regardless of you being like now in front of our computers, or actually on site.
Thank you, Ben. So with this, we come to the end of today's session, and I hope you all found this event to be insightful and engaging as much as we enjoyed putting it all together. Thank you once again, Ben and Karthik, for being with us today. We definitely got to learn a lot of perspectives shared by both of you. And with that, we wish all our audiences safety and the best of health. Have a great evening ahead, all of you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.